Start on the subject of the role of a free market, as it were, because a lot of people said President Trump really is for a free market. He wants to get the government sort of off the backs of business individuals. But now we hear yesterday that as part of these trade negotiations, he wants to sort of set the exchange rate between the Chinese yuan and the U.S. dollar. Is that consistent with free market economics?
Well, it may not be. Look, I do think that Trump is fighting the right fight here against China. I'm a free trade guy. Larry Kudlow's a free trade guy. I think actually in the end, Donald Trump believes in free trade, but he wants to get a more level playing field. He does think there's a lot of abuses that are taking place in China, and in fact, he's right about that. My proposal, what we're trying to push is for Trump to go towards, zero tariffs for both countries. So in other words, create the level playing field by bringing these tariffs down. I don't think it's a wise strategy to try to set the China currency. I mean, the most important thing is just to make sure that we have a currency that is stable in value. And one of the things I've told him, I think he's mistaken when he is very obsessed with the size of the trade deficit between the United States and China. That's not the right metric. What we want to see is China increase their imports of U.S. goods, our soybeans, our blue jeans, our bourbon, our manufactured items. And the truth is, it's very difficult for American companies. I've talked to a lot of CEOs say it's just really hard to penetrate the China market. If we can get this done, David, and we get a deal sometime, at least a deal to make a deal in the next 2 weeks, I think it'll be extremely bullish for the markets.
Yeah, and I haven't talked to anybody, certainly in business, who doesn't agree there's a real market access problem, a challenge with China. We didn't get all the way we thought we would with WTO originally. At the same time,
that's the understatement, David. That's the understatement of the century. I mean, there's a lot of concern about maybe we made a mistake in putting China in the WTO in the first place. I mean, they've violated just about every single principle of what the WTO is supposed to be about. I mean, look, China is engaged in a mercantilist policy. They cheat, they steal, they lie. I mean, we should not understate what a big problem they are. By the way, a lot of the other nations in the world, although they're very uneasy about this trade dispute between the United States and China, when we talk to people in Canada, or you talk to some of the leaders in Europe, they feel the same way about China, that the trade situation is a one-way street, and that can't continue any longer.
Yeah, and listen, Democrats and Republicans tend to agree, in my experience, on that basic point, that China has not complied with WTO, that they do cheat on it, no question about it. The question is, how do you get to the result you want? And you say you're for zero tariffs. We've heard the president from time to time say that as well. On the other hand, he says repeatedly he really likes tariffs. Last Friday, he was coming to the White House and said, I love tariffs. So which is it?
Well, David, I mean, I've been around Donald Trump a lot. He is a master negotiator. He likes to keep the people he's negotiating with off balance. So I think that's a lot of rhetoric from Donald Trump. He's basically putting out the word to the Chinese leadership. Look, if you don't get serious here, if you don't come forward with these concessions, or at least some kind of agreement in the next couple of weeks that we can move forward on, I think he will hit China with these 25% tariffs. I hope that doesn't happen. No one wants that to happen, but he feels very strongly that this abusive relationship can't continue. So I think he's just trying to keep the Chinese and the Europeans and some of our other trading partners a little bit off balance so they take him seriously.
So let's talk about another player in this, which is the Federal Reserve. I mean, they have something to say about all this. And actually, Janet Yellen weighed in yesterday specifically on this question of fixing the yuan exchange rate with the dollar. And she said monetary policy does have a systematic effect on a country's exchange rate. And nevertheless, I think that it's widely agreed that it should be available to be used for domestic purposes. So we would want to be careful not to define domestic policy tools as currency manipulation. So what role does the Fed have in respect to how strong the dollar is? You said a minute ago you thought we should have a stronger dollar, as I understand what you said, and that would indicate the Fed should be tightening.
No. Let me be very clear about this. I think the Fed is way, way too tight right now. I think that we don't have enough dollar liquidity in the market. I mean, everyone agrees that the Fed made a catastrophically bad decision in December. Even the Fed admits that now, as you just reported. But, and we'll find out more about that, in an hour or two when the Fed puts out its minutes. But my point is that I think the Fed is still way too tight. The Fed should be lowering rates, not raising them. If you look at commodity prices are still very low. That's a suggestion that we actually have mild deflation in the economy. And by the way, David, I was just looking at the latest statistics. If you look at the last 3 months on the CPI, 0 in let's see, 0 in November, negative 0.1% in December, and 0 in January. That's, and by the way, our target for the CPI is about 1 to 2%. So we need more dollar liquidity in the market because there's a big demand for dollars right now, and the Fed is still kind of strangling the economy with not getting that dollar liquidity out there. So it's not enough that they've said that they're not going to raise rates. They have to either stop, they have to actually start buying bonds rather than selling them off of their balance sheet now.
So let me get this straight, though, between fiscal and monetary policy.
Yeah.
Because I think some people would say we had very loose monetary policy, which kept us from going into a deeper recession or even a depression. But on the other hand, it's hard to say it really generated the growth. In fact, President Trump came to office saying we haven't had the growth we need. What we need is fiscal stimulus through tax cuts. Do you think that loose monetary policy stirs underlying growth in the economy? Is that true?
Sorry, say that again. Do I think what?
Loose monetary policy.
Look, our monetary policy is not loose. That's the point. If you look over the last 7 months, commodities have fallen by 15%, roughly 15%. How in the world is that a loose monetary policy? That's a way too tight. What the Fed should be doing, and there's more and more consensus on the right about this point, is it should simply target commodity prices to make sure that they remain stable over time. Look at the CRB index. I mean, it'd be interesting if you had that chart. I mean, you see what's happened with commodities. They keep falling. And it's not just one or two. It's not just oil. It's everything from soybeans to cotton to wheat to copper. They've been falling in price. And so my point is that the tax cut has been a great stimulus for the economy. It's been a supply side tax cut. It's shifted out the supply of, look what's happening in manufacturing, construction, other areas of the economy are very strong. But now that you've got the really good economic environment, and by the way, I've talked to the president about this, and the reason he's so upset with the Fed is our whole goal, David, when we put this plan together for Trump, was to get us to 3.5 to 4% growth. Right. Well, we can't get to 3.5 to 4% growth if the Fed is too tight as it is right now.